It's a very simple answer. We know from witnesses, the president's personal agents, and most importantly, the president himself, the only thing President Trump cared about with Ukraine was his investigations to benefit himself. To see this even more starkly, it's helpful to remember what presidential head of state calls are normally used for. Talk to any former occupant of the Oval Office, and they will tell you that the disparity in power between the President of the United States and other heads of state is vast. Since World War II, and consistent with the requirement to faithfully execute their oath of office, U.S. presidents from both political parties have made good use of the disparity in power in their telephone calls with foreign leaders. They've used those calls to secure commitments that bolstered American security and prosperity. Acting as our chief diplomat, President Reagan used his calls to European allies like Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher to rally the world against the Soviet threat, the shining city on the hill standing up to the evil empire. His calls laid the foundation for landmark nonproliferation agreements that averted a nuclear Armageddon. It was during a phone call on Christmas Day, 1991, that President George H.W. Bush learned that Mikhail Gorbachev intended to resign as Soviet premier, marking the end of the Soviet Union. Historians credit his deft diplomacy, including numerous one-on-one phone calls, for bringing about a peaceful end to the Cold War. Following September 11th, President George W. Bush used his calls with heads of state to rally global support for the U.S. campaign to defeat al-Qaeda, to work with our allies to protect and defend U.S. national security and terrorism.
But then he knocked down the motherfucking Twin Towers.
Obama used his calls with foreign leaders to contain the fallout from the global economic crisis, assemble an international coalition to fight the Islamic State, and of course to rally support for Ukraine following Russia's invasion of Crimea. No matter what you think of the policy views or priorities of these prior presidents, there is no question that they are examples of the normal diplomacy that happens during presidential telephone calls. And there is no doubt when you're the President of the United States and you call for a leader, you are on the clock for the American people. Consistent with the faithful execution of his or her oath of office, a president's first and only objective is to get foreign leaders to do what is in the best interests of the United States.
You mad because he didn't accept the oath?